Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May. Many of you know her as our clinical, organizationally, and forensically trained psychologist. She is the president and co-founder of A.M. May and Associates Incorporated. She is the president and founder of Celeste Productions Incorporated. She is a past president of the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation Board. She is also a member of the Metro Detroit Association of Black Psychologists. And if that wasn't enough, she is also an editor, an author, musician. She has been a columnist for the Michigan Women's Forum, where she had a column entitled Phenomenal Michigan Women. She has been a contributor to the Michigan Chronicle. She also participated and wrote a chapter in an anthology called Stars, Scholars Teaming to Alleviate Racism in Society. And this evening, Dr. Angie is going to be talking to us about distorting truth. Good evening, Dr. Angie. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I'm feeling great and so excited to be here with you again.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to have you on because I'm just was chomping at the bit. All right, so let's get right to it. So I've been doing some traveling. I was overseas for a couple of weeks and it was wonderful. I was spent some time in Africa and learning about history there, how slavery was defined, the history of what we know in America is not quite accurate. And then coming back here in the midst of a presidential election and hearing many of the same insulting themes, stereotypes that we've all been told, we've all heard. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to me because as I sit in the spaces that I sit in, I'm often having conversations with people. I've on a radio show that I help co-host. There's a gentleman who likes calling every week or every couple of weeks, and he says, "Well, Kamala Harris is not eligible to run for president. Her parents weren't citizens," and so we keep going through this whole birther issue, and it's ironic to me because here we are in 2024, and people are bringing up old cases like the Dred Scott case, Plessy versus Ferguson, to justify why things need to go back to the past. Why Black people, African Americans, however you identify, should not be allowed the same freedom. And it's interesting because as an American in Ghana, which is where I was, I was treated as not as an ancestor, but someone who had returned home. And it was funny because we were just talking about my skin tone and people kept saying, "You look like you could be Ghanaian." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Let me go and take a DNA test and see what comes back." But it was interesting because we went to a school and these were 6th and 7th graders, and the grasp that they had on history, because the first question, I went with a cultural immersion university tour. And we were sent to the school and we were instructed to have conversations with them. And so the kids all had questions. The very first question they asked me, they said, "Why did Americans come and take our gold?" I was like, "Oh," I said, "Are we starting here? Wait, y'all are in the 6th grade?"
Wow.
So comparing Americans with Ghanaians, I said, "Oh, these kids are on it." So we had a real frank, robust conversation. I hate that word. We use that word all the time, but a real in-depth conversation about what that means and about colonialism. And I come back to my earlier question. So many people here believe the lie that the election was stolen and continue to repeat that. They believe that the conspiracy theories around the Civil War, that the Civil War was not fought over slavery. Not that entirely that it was, but that there was a strong aspect of it that was in terms of
Absolutely.
states' rights. And so when you present evidence to people, they look at you, you don't know what you're talking about. And then they come up with something off the wall, and you're like, where did you get that? So, Dr. Angie, tell us first off, why is it so easy, or so, and I'm going to use this word intentionally, profitable for some people to distort the truth and perpetuate the lie? And why also is it so easy or profitable for some people to so easily believe the lie or the distorted truth?
I think part of your answer is in your question. It's profitable. Depending on who is perpetuating it, depending on why a particular person or group of people are perpetuating, these lies. From the profitability perspective, in terms of like literal making money, like literally profiting off of it. Anytime you're selling something and you're getting remuneration, you're getting money back for it, in exchange, then oftentimes if you want to like get the bodies in there, right? You want to get the bodies in there. So the more bodies you get to come under your carnival tent or come to your little pop-up shop or whatever. I did say carnival tent.
You did.
I did.
That's a great metaphor for it. Yes.
Yes. Metaphor, and it is what it is. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
All of those.
all of those. And then, what takes place in any of these such events? What takes place? Do they just go and they're seated and they just, wave their hands and clap and then they walk away and go home? Well, from what we've seen, no. There's like paraphernalia, there are hats, there are flags, there, so some folks are pocketing a lot of money. Lot of money. So there is really and truly, opportunities for a lot of profit in that. So, is making profit bad? Of course not. Is selling one's, you can go as far as saying selling one's soul, as people say, selling out one's values, etc. Or maybe one has no such values. They're just, willing to harm the public by being a part of the perpetuation of things that are not true. Is that a temptation? I think yes, it is a temptation for a lot of people. Just psychologically speaking, it takes some fortitude to say no to means and power and power and means.
Yes.
And the more opportunity that there is for that, the harder it can be to say no to that. So from the profit part side of it, yeah, like you said it yourself, like, there it is, lining the pockets. For those who may not be making a financial profit off of it, or a power profit, there's that too. Lots of these folk, they profit, if not by actually making money, by feeling powerful, feeling seen and heard. It's just like, the person that tells the tall tales, or who has the best stories at the party or around the campfire. That whole gather around, everyone gather around, right? So one can feel powerful and popular because everyone's listening to me. And what are the, some would say, what are the kinds of stories that get the most attention in this day and age, this technological day and age? Most likes, most, eyeballs, whatever it may be. It's the more, it's different categories, different things. It's the level of cuteness, the babies and the kitties and the puppies and all that. But in terms of what we're talking about, the fabrication, the stretching of the truth, the straight up lies, the conspiracy theories and all that. There are people who profit off of those things by the power that they feel. The more outrageous the stories, the more people will lean in and listen and gather around, tell me another one. So that's another part of the profitability part of it. People can feel like that they're have more power. There's also a psychological seductive part of feeling that you can sway people, that you
Mm.
can sway their opinions, that you can get them to do X, Y, and Z. There are whole industries based, based around that. We like, as we've talked about before in some of our previous conversations, people who have narcissistic traits or who are full-blown narcissists, or
Mm-hmm.
just you utilize some of those narcissistic tactics. That idea of, part of the again, that seductive quality of feeling that you have the power, feel you can sway people. That is something that can be certainly not impossible to resist at all, but it can be hard to resist. And depending on who you are, where you may be in your life, it can really be hard to resist. So there are lots of those kinds of reasons. Certainly to people will do like what they think that they can get away with to get to point B, or climb that
Mm-hmm.
ladder, or whatever it is. And if conspiracy theories are part of that, then so be it. So um, I think that that too is a lot of what we've seen, a permission structure for more and more conspiracy theories, less and less of the being accountable, less and
Mm-hmm.
less of the in. uh, We have plenty of people who are accountable, absolutely, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe we're seeing this a kind of unusual time in which we're living, where there's huge swaths of our different societies. That's what seems unusual. Um,
Mm-hmm.
i- i- have we ever seen people who make up stories, believe conspiracy theories, etc.? Have we ever seen that before? Of course we have. What's
Mm-hmm.
unique and unusual and dangerous, to your question, is so many large swaths of people.
Yes.
And I've talked about in the past my concerns. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but as a from a psychological perspective, you are forfeiting your critical thinking skills,
Mm-hmm.
and you are, as we talked about, you are forfeiting your power, not power like power grab like that, but your power over your own ability to make decisions based upon your own research, your own knowledge, understanding. You can get input from other people, you can hear what people have to say, you can even be persuaded. There are whole sections of the field of psychological research that deal strictly just with, persuasion and how that
Mm-hmm.
happens and all that. But yeah, the thing that I think some people realize it, but those who are involved in it from the consumer side, who are willing to listen to more and more conspiracy theories, a lot of times they're not realizing the law, what they're losing, what they're risking. And that can be a dangerous thing. So speaking of the listener side of it, that's another part of your question. What's in it
Yes.
for those who are perpetuating it? What's in it, and what keeps people there who are listening? Again, it can be several different things that can keep a person there, not just keep them there, but make a person feel like, I want to hear more. I want to hear more. Have
Mm-hmm.
you noticed, speaking of that, have you noticed that um, it seems that, and, just like sort of outside looking in at large groups of people, but then also, even if you know anyone in your life, it's
Mm-hmm.
gotten to the point. I'm going to go ahead and say post Trump. I'm
Yes.
going to go ahead and say that, because he was such a major pivotal public
Mm-hmm.
figure that swung open the door to the permission. And this is something he couldn't have done by himself. So
Right.
with others in authority, others in position of authority, in terms of holding office and, places of respect and all that, agreeing with him, supporting that, echoing what he has said, and all of that, as we know, has just hugely contributed to, again, this swung open door of permission structure to just
Mm-hmm.
say anything, not demand accountability, and try to get away with that. So for those who are listening to, taking that stuff in and, wanting to hear more, what I started to say is, have you noticed, because I was just thinking about this now, talking about it, how those who start listening to some of that, they do seem to want more and more of it, either want more
Yes.
and more, or
Yes.
they're more and more open to it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting psychological phenomenon. Also,
Mm-hmm.
it is a slippery slope. There's something about it that is kind of addictive a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and on one hand, I liken it to lying. lying is something that can become a real slippery slope really fast.
Right.
As we know, it can really snowball, because it's like, oh, I feel like you're getting away with something. You feel like
Mm-hmm.
that it worked for you to get out of something, helped you to avoid this or helped you to manipulate that. And remember, feeling like you have the ability to manipulate people and situations, that too is a feeling of a type of power. And it actually is considered by those who are in the social psychology realm and sociology realms in terms of what they study, people in groups and
Mm-hmm.
influences of groups and individuals on groups and vice versa. um that there's a whole areas of research around that, just that alone, the ability to persuade, the
Mm-hmm.
ability to manipulate people into believing X, Y, and Z. So I think that for the people who, what keeps the people there and what makes them want more, why does it seem like it's addictive? I think part of the draw is the feeling of I was gonna say abandoned, like
Mm-hmm.
a feeling like, oh, it's like the story you told, you were telling about the lipstick,
Oh,
earlier.
yes.
Yes, it was like that. Talking when we were talking previously, and yeah, that's kind of a natural human reaction to have something that you were told no a lot, or if you were younger about certain things, well, no, you can't have that, or no, you don't have permission of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as you have an opportunity, or get old enough, or get in an environment in which you can like try
Mm-hmm.
some of that or whatever, then you kind of want to put a toe in there. That doesn't mean it's true for every single person, of course. A lot of people will run from the thing they were told no to because they said, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's making me
Mm-hmm.
nervous, I'll stay away from it. But to the degree that being told that being told no, and that we have to like observe certain rules of society, and we have to observe certain protocol, etc. When one puts a little toe outside of that, it can feel like really like, oh my gosh, this feels really exhilarating and exciting. What has that to do with the conspiratorial thinking, conspiratorial
Right.
stories, etc.? Um, with the truth, as good as the truth can feel, and it can feel good even when it's a painful truth, it can be unburdening, so
Mm-hmm.
when I say as much light as the truth can lend, as it does, um it does require security,
Mm-hmm.
like feeling secure enough to allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to tell the truth. It
Mm-hmm.
does require responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
because whatever that truth is, you have to take responsibility for it. You may have to pay consequences for it. It does take work to a certain degree, depending on what it is, because like we've talked about with the journalism profession, actual journalism, in which you have a license and you have to adhere to ethics. And you
Yes.
can lose
And you
your
have to tell
privilege.
the truth. You have to tell the unadulterated truth without your opinion.
Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
and that if you tell something that's not true, you have to print or state a retraction. Um,
Yes.
so those are rules, regulations, and guidelines, things around truth that require responsibility, require security, etc. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it, because they're like solid rock. They're things you can count on.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, depending on where a person might be or who the person is, their background, where they're coming from, and all that, that same bedrock of stability, that I know I can count on that, because I've seen I've experienced it, or I've seen the facts, or I can back it up. This makes sense to me. I can draw a line,
Mm-hmm.
between X and Y, and as grounding as that can feel, um, depending on who the person is or where they are, to step outside of that feels the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Feels reckless. It feels like I'm throwing up, like I was mentioning before, abandoned, like, throwing
Right.
caution to the wind, right? That
Mm-hmm.
can feel fun. That's what we did as adolescents. Well, I didn't do too much of that, because, I wasn't coming home to that.
Yeah. No, not at
I wasn't trying to get into that much trouble.
all.
But yeah, we all have our little version of stepping outside of that, a little here and there. It's human nature. Um, but the draw and the pull for some people to begin to live there and abandon, what goes along with that. The abandon part of what you're abandoning is not just the rule. It feels like at first it's the rules. I don't, how powerful it feels to be able to finally say to authority, I don't have to believe that just because you told me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to. Well, the truth is, no, you don't have to believe it just because you told me. As a
Mm-hmm.
matter of fact, what we're referring to when we're fighting against conspiracy theories is to say, don't believe it just because you're told.
Exactly.
But it feels like it can feel to some people like they're taking something back, they're taking some power back.
Mm-hmm.
And if you already are feeling disenfranchised, you're already feeling vulnerable, and that your needs are not being met, like vulnerable in a
Mm-hmm.
negative way,
Mm-hmm.
already feeling unheard, unseen, and beat up by society and the powers that be, it can feel very, it is a very powerful draw to say, you know what, I didn't realize I had the power to disagree with that. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
to agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then folks, little by little begin to just live there, where they just tell me whatever that's going to fit with what I want to hear right now. It's like a perpetual state of adolescent rebellion
Mm-hmm.
by way
Mm-hmm.
past grown grand people.
Mm-hmm.
Way past grown.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So the story that we were talking about earlier for our audience, when I was a kid, I was teeny little thing. I was probably a kindergartner. A little girl in my class had red nails, and she was painting everyone's nails red. And I love the color red. And I said, "Oh, paint my nails." And so she did. I knew I was not allowed to have my nails painted red, but they were pretty. And I hid my nails for about a day. And then my mother saw them one day, and I got in big trouble and was told that I was acting like a streetwalker. So, for those of you that don't know what a streetwalker is, hence prostitute, I
Yep.
had no idea what that was. All I knew is it was something bad. And it was funny because even as a teenager, like when I started wearing gloss, like lip gloss, I didn't wear red. I either wore a wine color because it came from Avon, or this bright pink that did nothing for my skin. It just clashed. And I was like, oh, this is ugly. And so then I would struggle for probably from 13 or 14, trying to find the right shades. I never really wore red nail polish because of the same reason. I always thought it doesn't look right on me. Red does, and so it was funny. I wouldn't wear red clothes. Like all of a sudden, I had this aversion to red until my girlfriend, who has since passed on, who wore this beautiful shade of red, and she had this beautiful chocolate skin. And I said, "Violet, I wish I could wear red like you do." And she said, "Girl, you can. I don't know what's wrong with you." And then I told her the story, and she said, "Oh, you poor thing. Your mama traumatized you." I said, "She did." And so then she said, "I'm going to help you find a red." And so then people started talking about undertones, and I was like, I have no idea what you're talking. But then I learned that I have reddish undertones in my skin. So there are certain types of makeup that allowed me to step outside of what I had been taught, of what I learned. And all of a sudden, the world of red opened up to me, and I was like, where have you been?
The world of red.
The world of red opened up. So your description of stepping your toe into something that feels exhilarating, because this isn't what we were taught. JD Vance went on this whole rant about people who aren't parents don't have as much stock as parents. And I thought, what? So for all these women who have to go through IVF or have to go through multiple miscarriages to have a rainbow child, or they use a surrogate, or they have and for anyone who's listening, pregnancy can turn and go in a different direction at any point. No pregnancy ever starts from beginning to end everything works out right. There's always something. It doesn't mean that it's something catastrophic, but the doctors, you are literally growing another person inside your body. So if your blood pressure is off, guess what? That baby's blood pressure might be off. If in my case, I had large children and my doctor kept telling me, you're not going to be able to have these babies naturally, because I thought I was that girl who was going to have my babies naturally. She said, they are too big. Your body can only do so much. And so for me, I developed gestational diabetes because there was too much water and fluid and everything else, but I was all baby. There was no fat. And it was funny because my second pregnancy, I was nauseous for 7 months, couldn't eat a thing. And my doctor looked at me, she said, "Are you?" I said, "Please, no, I can't eat anything because everything makes me sick." And she said, "We have medicine for that." But I say that to say, if I am someone who comes from a rural or a small town and we are talking about homegrown values, we're a Christian, this and that, and you go to the big city and all of a sudden people are yelling and cursing, and you see people of all different shades and persuasions running around dancing, you be like, "Oh, wait, what's happening? All these people are out. Oh, you guys can stay out. Wait, nothing shuts down at 7 o'clock. Oh, we can stay open until 11 or 12, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Oh, I like it here." I liken it to almost that. And so I agree with you. People get really, really excited.
Yeah, they get really excited and feel like that it's something that they don't want to let go of.
Right.
And it just feeds on itself. And again, we always want to caution against painting with a too broad a brush. Every single person caught up in certain things are, because we also hear stories of people saying, well, either it got just too much, or that was just way a little too far for me, or I really did go super, super far and something woke me up, or I recognized it, or someone helped me recognize it,
Right.
what am I doing? How am I living my life? But yeah, it's like so many aspects of behavior, thinking, emotion, or psychology. On the one hand, it's multi-layered and complex and individualized, depending on who the person is and their journey and all that. And at the same time, on the other hand, there are aspects of even what we're talking about that are not that complicated, kind of like straightforward and universal. When I was talking earlier about, to answer the part of your question about why people may stay there and, listen to that stuff and keep coming back, and I was saying that part of the draw can be, depending on, again, their background, that they can start to feel heard by others, because people are telling them, maybe it starts out telling them some things that they want to hear, or fits with what they were, I'm angry, or I'm anxious, or I'm already feeling XYZ. And even though you're giving me no evidence whatsoever, you're just coming up with conspiracy theory, bam, but it feels good. It feels soothing. It feels like, and the soothing part is, maybe I don't have to fight so much, or we were talking about the truth, try so hard, or I could just relax into this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of those parts, some of those things are kind of universal also, that the less you might tend, something to keep in mind psychologically too, and spiritually, the less that you are getting fulfilled. None of us are perfect. We have things that we're working on, etc. I may feel we have some lack of fulfillment here, or whatever it may be. But the more that defines your life, the greater the likelihood, and the more likely you are to fall for and be. I use the word vulnerable a few times, but be open to kind of whatever might fill that for you. If you're already super angry about how you've been treated by society, and let's say you really have been treated by society badly, the straightforward things that are pretty universal for all of us is that for the most part, you may be limited in how much you can affect your material environment, meaning, you know, where you live and all that. You may have some limitation about that. You may have a lot of limitation at a period of time in your life, but we always have choice. We always have choice.
Absolutely.
And some of the people that I've seen, I'm sure you've seen, and your listeners and your audience have had in their own lives, people that they've known and seen. We always know, well, maybe not always, but one would hope that we know of people who are some of the most loving, most giving people, some of the people who work hard to champion the truth and all that, because they were treated badly, because they weren't getting that, because they were told lies about themselves or put down or whatever it is. And then they made a choice to be dedicated to say, you know what, I don't want to perpetuate that because I know how that made me feel. Whereas other people may not have that wherewithal or that mentality or that bent or whatever. And they will take some of those same negative experiences and just let it fester and grow and not work on it or let it out or whatever. And then if you're already walking around with that anger that has festered inside and has grown, and then you have someone come along who can tell you some made up stuff that can fit with your already angry, negative view of the world, then, oh, wow, yeah, you know, it can be even harder to say no to that. And that's something else I was going to mention too. Again, you know, that whole question, very important question you're asking about why people do it and why people take it in, you know, listen to that stuff. The power of scapegoating.
Oh, yeah. Talk
Absolutely.
about it, Dr. Angie.
Come on now. Wait. The people in the back, the doors of the church, they're not open.
The doors of the church are open. For those
open?
that are sitting in the back, we're going to repeat it.
Exactly.
Scapegoating.
Scapegoating. Yes. That is a major part of many of these conspiracy theories. And I don't think it is said enough. I don't think it's talked about in that way enough. We definitely hear dialogue about you know, all the people that believe in conspiracy theories, but we need to dig into them more. We are hearing people say that some of the reasons, or the kinds, I should say, some of the types of theories out there have to do with perpetuating negative racist tropes about different groups of people, perpetuating negative tropes about women, and Black and brown women, etc. You know, it just continues. Negative tropes about people who do not have as much in terms of financial means. You know, if you're poor, then, you know, you can't be trusted because blah, you know, all the poor people that are stealing, that's right, you know, all the nonsense. Those are all types of scapegoating, making a group, you know, pinning all the woes of your life on a group is a wonderful way. I say sarcastically, no, I don't actually think it's a wonderful way, but it's unfortunately a proven way that people can get out of the responsibility of telling the truth and dealing with what is actually hindering them in their own lives. And one of the reasons people run away with that is because that might mean, and really pretty much in order to go from step A to step B in life, no matter what you're working on, or not working on, but working on, requires looking in the mirror. Scapegoating, a lot of these conspiracy theories, well, you know, it's because of all the migrants, the immigrants, the you know, put that word, beware everyone, when you hear the in front of the blah, blah, and then name a group after it, no matter what it is, it's a stereotype, it's an exaggeration, it's a conspiracy theory, and it's a way of scapegoating a group of people that does a few things, you know, twofold there. Number one, it makes me feel better because I can feel superior. You know, I am, but I can perpetuate this lie that I'm better than because I can scapegoat and point you people have the problem. I'm better than that. And it's a way to avoid looking in the mirror for yourself and doing work and taking responsibility and or acknowledging that maybe there are some things that you need to work on. You know, somebody was talking recently about that in terms of, they weren't saying scapegoating, but this whole conversation, this whole idea, conspiracy theories. And I'm trying to remember who it may have been Joy Reid. It's either Joy Reid or it was someone who had um West Indian background
Mm-hmm.
themselves. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking it may have been Joy or someone maybe on her show or something. But they made an excellent point. Excellent point. And it was an answer. I don't even know. I can't remember what show it was, but it was an answer to those who, find themselves saying perpetuating this
Mm-hmm.
without uh without facts, without research to back it up. Just keep perpetuating this idea, this conspiracy theory that, these immigrants, when they come over into your country, they just want all the jobs that we have. They want my job. They want to come after my and the person who has, who is a child of immigrants, in this case, Black immigrants and brown
Mm-hmm.
immigrants, they made this point that, well, actually the statistics, research, and anecdotal evidence has shown that many of these people who come over, they may start out in some of the lower wage, things to get a foothold and try to work their way up. But they are not trying to pursue your job. They're looking way past anything you think that you're doing. I mean, not to put
Yep.
you down, whatever it is that you're doing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's the
but
truth.
whatever your job is. Yeah, many of these people are coming from countries and cultures and traditions that are pushing excellence. Go as far as you can in your area of choice, your
Mm-hmm.
profession. They want to become doctors, Indians.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, doctor.
Yes.
I said
Yes.
Indians. I was thinking about my Indian from India friends for who
Yes.
I would say doctors and engineers. I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
about some of my friends that, like engineering is like engineering or medicine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They talk about
Mm-hmm.
that's drilled into them by their parents.
Yep.
But yeah, they want to become doctors, or their eye is on engineering, the sciences, teaching,
Mm-hmm.
one of the most
Yes.
honorable professions, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Things that they want to do. It is not to go after, you know, what your job is, whomever you are that is saying that, not to put down your profession, but by scapegoating and accepting conspiracy theories as well as perpetuating them, it does that damage, as we know, of reducing humans to
Mm-hmm.
a little miniature, little quip, and then that keeps us from looking more. Another part of the answer to your question: why do people continue to do that, and why do people
Mm-hmm.
listen to it?
Mm-hmm.
It keeps you from having to confront
Yes.
some of the lies that
Mm-hmm.
you've been told and accepted,
Mm-hmm.
that maybe that little stereotype, that the little quip that you think describes a whole group of people might actually be lies. Maybe that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
some people it just feels risky. Like, I don't even want to find that out. It's more comfortable to believe this conspiracy theory, because then again, it helps to feed my ego and make me feel like that I'm superior, which you're not, because we're all equal under the eyes of
Right.
the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me feel like that I'm better than them. So I would prefer to just continue to listen to that stuff and perpetuate it than actually accept it. Fear that it's going to change my way of life.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of. We are deep in the throes of a country that is, we're not looking for the browning. We're not
Mm-mm.
waiting for the browning of America to start. We're deep in the throes, and we've already turning those corners. And so people are afraid of loss. They're afraid of ways of life that they're going to lose. They're afraid of losing their own traditions and being absorbed. And it has to be said, of course, there are
Mm-hmm.
those who are afraid that the way that they treated others when they were a part of the dominant culture is going to be the way that they are going to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
So much of all of that is in uh why people perpetuate this stuff, why people keep wanting to listen to this stuff. And in this day and age right now, with the browning, since we're Americans, we're browning of America, but we're seeing it in other countries too, as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Immigrants, migrants come in, and the horrible attitudes and treatment, perpetuating these negative stereotypes about, kinds of people that they are. um this fear that, not just my way is going to be lost, my way of life, but there's another word for some of that, and that's my power. Like,
Mm-hmm.
fear that my power
Mm-hmm.
is gonna go. So all of that's in there too. All of that's a part of this very important question that you ask.
Amazing, amazing. So thank you for bringing up critical thinking skills and
Yes.
scapegoating.
Hmm.
For those of us, Dr. Angie,
Yeah.
who are tired of advocating, arguing, and discussing, the distorted truth and trying to help educate people, breaking down those barriers, those stereotypes, different things in the spaces which you exist in, inhabit. What is some advice that you would give to people who are exhausted? Because often I'll hear people say, oh, I don't want to talk about politics. Please don't start talking about politics. That, and then everybody says that, and then people start talking about, and some people, and you see it, they literally will shut down. Like, I don't want to talk about it. Politics makes me angry. I know a lot of it is fear, a lot of it is anger. And a lot of it is just people just don't understand, and they don't know that they don't understand. They're not trying to. And it does make it difficult. And like I said, when you travel, and you know this, when you travel, you get a different experience when you go different places and you get to hear things. And for me, being able to travel to Africa, I was able to ask a question that people have said to me, Africans don't like us. So I asked the question. I stood there proudly. I said, because one of the historians said, well, what questions do you have for me? So I said, is it true that you all don't like us? And if it is, why don't you? He looked at me.
I love it. I love it. Just boldly, just come on.
I did. I said, I need to understand why. I said, because my experience here, everyone has been very kind to me and has been welcoming. And I've been able to have these great, vulnerable, in-depth conversations where there's been an exchange of information between two people. And it's not because I'm an American and they're this or they're that. It's been a genuine shift for me. And so the historian said, that is not true. He said, thank you for asking that question. There's other couple of people who shook their head like, yeah, we've heard that too. I said, I've always heard that. And I just didn't understand why. And he said, but I want you to think about why would people say that to you? And I said, interesting. So back to my question. For those of us who've had experiences or had opportunity to learn and understand, and we try to share that with others who shoot us down or tell, or as has been said to me, from a white person's perspective, I'm tired of being blamed for everything. I'm like, okay, I don't know who blamed you for anything. I'm not blaming you for anything. I'm just telling you a fact. How should we engage? Because you have to dig through the layers of the lie, of the scapegoating. You got to use your critical thinking skills to be able to pick all that information apart and really dig deep to figure it out and understand it. But then once you do get that understanding, I personally believe each of us has a responsibility to share that information.
Yes.
But as someone who's tired of arguing, what advice do you have for us, Dr. Angie?
An excellent question. And I want to answer part of it with a travel story of my own, having just from traveling across the country to the Rocky Mountains and by train and all that beautiful trip. But before I do, because I do want to share a story that goes right to that, right to practicing that, practicing having those conversations without it devolving into folks fighting on who's that fighting on the floor. Somebody come and get you. Right, exactly. But before I answer that though, if I may, I want to just weigh in a little bit on the Africans don't like Black Americans thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you gone to Ghana. Did you remain in the country of Ghana, or did you go?
Yes, okay. We traveled through 3 cities. So we were in Accra, which is the capital, and then we went to a city called Kumasi, Kumasi, which is where the Asante Empire is. And then we went to Cape Coast. And in Kumasi and Cape Coast, we visited both of the slave castles. So Elmina is in Kumasi, and then there's the Cape Coast Castle, which is in the Cape Coast. Both are off the ocean. You get to see both of them. You can walk through. The buildings are in very good condition. They put you into a cell where the slaves were housed. The
Yeah.
smell is still there. The smell is still there.
Wow.
Yes.
And
And
of the five senses, the sense of smell is the most powerfully tied to memory and early memories too.
and so
Wow.
it's a sobering experience because they would walk us into the women's dungeon, the men's dungeon, and they would say, okay, everybody go inside, and they would close the door. So you'd hear the door slam shut, you'd hear the latch lock. And there were a couple people who were claustrophobic, and they
Oh yeah.
immediately started to panic. But I think that everybody started, because even I started to have a moment where I was like, there's no air.
Exactly.
There's 40 of us in this room. And you start to think about what your ancestors went through. And then they show you the divots that are built, like they would build this canal system around the room. And it was just essentially this crevice that just traveled around the room like a river. And that was where all your bodily fluids went. And at Cape Coast, they had a spot. It was dark. Feces, urine, blood, semen, tears. Whatever it's called scientifically when they test for it, they were able to determine that that's what it was.
Wow.
And they said this particular spot, you can see it. They said it was so much waste that it calcified. And it is now, and this is probably not the right way to say it, but it is now a part of the concrete, the brickwork that was there. They are fused together. And for me, having experienced that and so many other experiences in Ghana and coming back and listening to people perpetuate lies about Vice President Kamala Harris, that, you know, she's not eligible to run, that is a categorical falsehood.
Absolutely.
That is a lie.
Absolutely.
To say that President Biden was dead and former
Ageism.
president, yes, former
Absolute
President
clickbait.
Obama, right, is running things. I'm like, he's not. He's right. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And then there were
Whatever.
other people, right? And then there were
Someone
other
just
people, right? Then there were other people saying, well, you know, Trump is really running things. I said, well, if he's running things, why aren't things better?
And why are you complaining about the things?
Things, yes.
Since he's running things. Yeah.
Right. I said, President Biden is trying to fix a lot of the stuff that former person messed up and did. But I'm going to be quiet so you can answer the question, because I can.
No, it's also true what you say. Thank you for answering my question and sharing more about that amazing emotional trip that you took. I was asking you, did you mainly stay in Ghana? Because from my experience, there's so much of the continent of Africa that I would like to still see. I've been to Northern Africa. I've been to Southern Africa. My husband and I have friends who are Nigerian, different sets of friends and stuff coming from different parts. But I would weigh in just that question that you were asking about why they say that. Number one, you were going to get all kinds of love if it was Ghana. And I've had many Ghanaians say that. No, first of all, to say Africans feel, so yeah, we are all part of the diaspora, so we're all tied together. Absolutely. And there are some things that are just, you know, it's just part of our people. It's just no matter, which is so cool. We love, you know, that being said, which is absolutely we believe that, we know that, we experience that. Again, it is a continent with different cultures, different histories, a variety of beliefs, etc. So I would, no offense whatsoever to your guide and your expert, taking nothing away from that person. But I would say that it is equally narrow, perhaps we could say, to assume that a people of a continent all are just thrilled with all that is Black Americans, you know.
I agree. I agree.
So it is absolutely a stereotype and an overt exaggeration that, you know, Africans don't like you know, Americans. There are varied and complicated histories because we are Americans with that African lineage. And so there are those who see us, and this is not unique just to the African continent, but as you say, when you travel outside of our country, you see how other countries tend to roll, and how what's similar and what's different for us as Americans. They will often we are seen as Americans first by many.
Right.
And so issues that they may, even though not considered the power class, any issues that they may have, a particular group of people, a person, whomever, with Americanism, the ugly American, which is a stereotype as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. With individual treatment or personal experiences, you know, all of that goes into that for all sides. So there, yes, there are some who are not thrilled to be categorized with Black Americans. Some of that has to do with not looking down on Black Americans, but it has more to do with saying, I'm trying to show you my unique background.
Right.
No, don't assume. And others are saying, those are my brothers and sisters. Many are saying, those are my brothers and sisters. So, yeah, there's just more nuance, I would say, to that. It's certainly not all, you know, negative in any way, shape, or form. But getting back to my traveling that I just got back from the cross country trip speaks exactly to what you're saying. So we had an extra an extra day unexpectedly because our Amtrak train, which is, you know, famous for being behind schedule, was amazingly on time and ahead schedule going. Like, you know, my brother's birthday, so it was like a great birthday present, you know, famous for being on time, and it was one beautiful, beautiful trip either way, the mountains and all that. But on the way back, got, you know, delay, etc. So that resulted in an extra unexpected day, which we enjoyed. Actually, we enjoyed our extra day there. It was beautiful. And so there was a small group of us from the train who were going to be taking the Chicago train back into Detroit. There was a small group of us, you know, that train was late. It was due to no fault of ours. So Amtrak put us up for the night and, you know, et cetera, paid for it. Appreciative, very nice. And so our little small handful of people got to know each other on the shuttle bus that Amtrak paid to transport us, to put us up and then bring us back the next morning, make sure we got off okay on the next train, you know, coming back home. And these different people were coming from different parts of the country. So for us, back to Detroit, some going to Kentucky, wherever they may have been going. So there was this young man, very friendly white young man. You know, he just doesn't know a stranger, like loved to talk and share his story. And he had talked about how he didn't lead with this at all, but eventually he was saying that he had been incarcerated for a period of time. He became a Christian or turned his life back over to the Lord, and it just really turned his life around. And so he was talking about that in terms of how he runs he's an entrepreneur, so he has a construction company. And he started talking, he and another guy, you know, with my husband, different ones, they were discussing construction, asking my husband questions because he's on the design end and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And they were discussing. So this young man, he, and this is one wonderful way to handle it, which I love, because we were all chatting. And then at some point, he and I started chatting. And we talked about all kinds of things, his wife, kids, business, how things, blah, 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 you know, because that part was already there. We got to know each other. Then I didn't bring it up. And it's interesting because our layover going cross country and coming back was in Chicago. So right at the time of the convention. And so he said, gosh, you know, all these politics, you know, I just don't know, you know. And so I would say in ways to approach this for those who are exhausted, you know, who are listening and watching. First and foremost, main thing is, I know that this has been people's experience. I know for sure it's been mine too. I totally understand. don't go forward assuming it's got to be an argument.
Yes.
So start with that. And
Mhm.
that's what my mom would say was that, well, wait a minute, don't assume, I've got to go deal with, but see what today brings. So with him, and that's a great approach. Start with talking about, start with the relationship where you are. If you have one, he was a total stranger. So we were just chatting, really enjoyed each other's company, just chatting and talking about different things, blah, blah, blah. So by the time he brought it up, he's still this guy who has a big heart.
Mhm.
Oh, and I didn't finish. I was saying that he mentioned his being incarcerated because in his business, he goes out of his way to give fellow people who have done
Mhm.
time, so really nice guy, but he does it. So when he said that, I was like, okay, this is my opportunity. So for him, wouldn't do this with everyone. I wouldn't advise doing it with everyone, but you gauge where they are, you use your critical thinking and you use your emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Try to see where they are emotionally. It's all the rest, where you are in relationship. So I said to him, I just said it point blank. I said, okay, now, since he brought it up, okay, now, I said, all in love, all in love. I said, I promise I won't yell at you. And he smiled. He said, okay, thank you. I said, so just tell me so we can, let's talk about it. Since he brought it up. What are
Okay.
you thinking? Okay, how are you, see, how, so how, okay, what do you think? He says, well, now in his case, he was saying, I have voted for Trump in the past. It's true. I try not to be, I don't consider myself Republican or Democrat. I vote my conscience, so that's someone, you probably could have a conversation with a little bit,
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but the fact that he said, he laughed and said, okay, thank you. When I said, okay, I promise not to yell at you, just tell me so. Um, and so what I did, which felt really good, having had those arguments that you were talking about, those examples,
Mhm.
it felt good to be able to say, okay, so tell me why. I want to know. And because my husband has those conversations all the time with people.
Mhm.
Why? He felt comfortable saying, well, and so I could gently and lovingly with some facts
Mhm.
kind of poke a few holes gently,
Mhm.
and doing so in a way that I didn't want him to feel judged or put down.
Right.
Because that's another thing about people clinging harder to their conspiracy theories when you
Mhm.
confront them, is some of these folks are embarrassed. They're embarrassed themselves and they're not ready to let that go or admit it. So I didn't want him to feel attacked. That's something else. A lot of times we do have good intentions, but we're already starting out hopping mad. We're starting out mad and we're annoyed. And so we've already kind of like sabotaged our own efforts not to be, attacking, not to put it all on us. I'm not saying that at all.
Mhm.
But ways to approach it are see what the vibe is, approach it with from a loving stance. Don't always assume it's got to be an argument because it takes two to argue.
Mhm.
So with him, he was saying, well, my business did do better, under Trump. Now, I've learned to say to people gently, because we've all been caught with that. Part of the frustration for us too is, and even arguing back if we feel that they're mistaken, or I say us, and I don't want to perpetuate the us and them, of course, not
Mhm.
feeling you have the answers, or not feeling that you have the facts or whatever, and you don't want to feel like you have to constantly carry around a giant textbook,
Yes.
to thumb through it and let me get that chapter. I'm gonna tell you what Biden did. Who wants to get another degree just so you can? What we want to do
Exactly.
is keep learning. We want to
Right.
keep expanding our
Mhm.
knowledge, and yes, we do want to do that, but I just gently said, well, I've heard people say that. Really, really key. Really, really key. Do not rush to, well, no, that's not, don't rush to push back. When you ask them what they're thinking,
Mhm.
ask them why. Well, why do you see it that way? How they answer you helps you gauge with emotional intelligence and critical thinking. Okay, somewhere in there where I might be able to open up the dialogue a little more, or maybe point some things out in a way that doesn't make them feel whatever. And one of the great ways to do that is to, again, we hear it, it sounds cliche, people hear it all the time, but it's true. Finding that common ground. How do
Mhm.
I find a common ground with somebody red hat wearing, or whatever you're, things like, I can understand why that could be scary. I can
Mhm.
understand why. Yeah, okay, I can hear that. I hear what you're saying. that immediately can de-escalate it, because they're not, number one, they're not used to that. Aren't you
Mm-hmm.
kidding? Aren't you gonna? They're not used to that.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, I'm a big one for not equivocating. Oh, even Steven. No, it's not even Steven. And once I just plain lying. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
stop it all. But there are those in those places where some things are similar. Both sides can get heated. Both sides can go at each other. All the rest. So, asking in a respectful way,
Mm-hmm.
letting them know up front, I listen, you know what, you are totally, and we hear people do this, aversion.
Mm-hmm.
You are
Mm-hmm.
totally entitled to your opinion and your experience. I don't want to take anything away from that. I'm just curious. Tell me more about why. So that goes a long way to de-escalate. So you don't start there. The other person, helps them to not feel nearly as defensive, because you're not just coming attacking, and allowing yourself to room to that agree to disagree business,
Mm-hmm.
where you say, well, I can't say I really agree with you or see it that way, but I totally respect your right to feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if
Mm-hmm.
they're just straight up racist, just you just don't respect. I don't respect your right to come after people. No, I don't respect it. I ain't gonna lie, I say I respect. But what you can do is a version of, I can respect you because I want you to respect me. So, I respectfully, I don't like, I don't like to put people down or insult them.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways to answer when they are perpetuate, like you say, coming after Kamala Harris with this negative, horrible, statements. But some of those things, asking questions, well, before you do anything, check yourself. Check yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Check
Mm-hmm.
yourself. I have said to myself, I don't want, it's easy to get into the judgmental space. I don't want to carry judgment. I can clearly see, based on facts, analysis, my own experiences, I can lean into, some of those things that, yes, she's qualified, and I can tell you why, because of this, her career, she slept her way. Well, you know what? Everything she's attained were elected positions. You might find it hard to sleep with multi-millions of people to get into a position that's not appointed.
I
So,
agree.
exactly. So, the combination of, I have found very effective bringing logic, and I'm a very emotional person, but if you have some information or some things that you feel that you can really stand on with some background, people have a hard time fighting back against. They'll just get real quiet sometimes. Fighting back against, again, you don't have to have like know the whole, like pull out the scroll,
This is true.
but some dates, some concretes here and there, like what I just said. Well, she was elected to every position that she attained. She was not
Mm-hmm.
appointed, so you can't sleep yourself into an elected position. And then sometimes you'll just get that pause for a second, because people brains just exploded, and then they'll just come back with, well, I don't care what
Mm-hmm.
anybody says. I still believe. To which I have found it helpful to say, at least it helps me. It makes me feel to say, give answers such as, well, that's totally your right to do that. That's totally your right to believe whatever you want. I prefer not to teach, the kids in my life to believe whatever they want, because then they can end up harming themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to believe
Mm-hmm.
things based on some, so I encourage you maybe to, do some more, think about where you get your research from. But try to check yourself to make sure that you're not coming in there with anger and fury. If you're carrying around a lot of anger and
Mm-hmm.
fury because of the frustration of interacting with people who keep doing these conspiracy theories, work on that before you have these conversations. Um, Try to approach people with respect and a loving spirit. Understand that people oftentimes are believing conspiracy theories, even though they're maybe spewing mad, because they
Mm-hmm.
themselves are frustrated, on some level. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Listen, all those kinds of things. I have found to be very helpful. And I'll just one last thing with my interaction with this young man. Um, Learn to like kind of or like develop this. That sounded bad. Learn to, we all, let me put that, let me do better. We all need to learn, which we do. like you said, with critical thinking, emotional intelligence, kind of gauge, let us not engage in the same kind of conspiracy theories and stereotyping that we're mad at other people about doing. So
Yes.
let us not just say, oh, they're blah blah blah, so they're going to react. You don't know that. Let's find out. Try to learn how, and just like develop and work on the ability to gauge whom you might be able to have a certain conversation and to what degree. How far can you go? Some
Mm-hmm.
people have a higher tolerance for a real conversation, and other people, they're just not there yet. But rather than just throwing up your hands and say, see, I just, plant the seeds in whatever respectful way. Don't assume that just because you don't see the results in front of you, and you may never see that person again, but some things stay with people. So to wrap up with my young friend, the young man on the one young white guy on the train, he I can't remember, I was saying some things to him, and he was saying, well, that's true, you got a point about that. I was talking about his racism, because
Mm-hmm.
he had was just, this is another really good one, folks who are professing Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're wanting to follow someone, and this is not just all about him whom shall not be named, number 45. That's not nice. He's a man of need of prayer like anyone else with a soul.
A lot
But
of prayer. Yes.
a lot of prayer. And those of his ilk, um,
Yes.
most definitely. But it's not only about him and them, just
Mm-hmm.
humanity,
Mm-hmm.
of course, as you're
Right.
asking. Um, Talking with him, listen for things like when he said, well, you've got a point about that. What I was saying was, I know you care about being a Christian for your kids, and etc. I don't want to follow, as a Christian myself, I don't want to follow someone who is vulgar and says all kinds of things out of his mouth, who is racist and treats women with such disrespect. That's just not God. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't argue. I just said, here's my perspectives. And I use things that the other person couldn't argue, because that's just all you see from Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like 90%, and it's all recorded. So you can't dispute it. So one could if you just make some stuff up, but he's like,
Right.
well, yeah, that's true. If you're talking with someone who is of another side of thinking politically, and you hear that lets you know, okay, there's room there,
Mm-hmm.
to maybe talk a little bit. We talked a little bit more about a couple other things, and then I made another point, gentle point, and I could see he was beginning to shift uncomfortably. He was beginning to squirm a little bit, and that was my cue. I was like, the message. He wasn't doing, I don't even think consciously, but it was kind of like, okay, it's cool, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing we need to accept as well. That sometimes it's not about winning the argument. It's just about
Mm-hmm.
making it a little bit, sharing some knowledge, and that'll help push the boundary a little bit more. And sometimes it's just time to leave that.
Yep.
So all of those
Yep.
things can help you keep your blood pressure lower.
Yes. And we definitely need to do that.
We do.
Thank you, Dr. Angie. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Oh,
Before we
thank
get out of here, tell us everything you have coming up.
you.
Tell us
Okay.
how we can find you and how we can follow you on social media.
Okay. Well, you can follow me on social media. I'm not on Threads yet. I know many of you are on Threads. I haven't gone on Threads yet, so I'm on the old basics, Instagram, YouTube, and Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and a little bit on Twitter, X, a little bit on there.
Mm-hmm.
So for
Mm-hmm.
me personally, and for my business with my sister, well, for me personally, my name, I just use my full name, Angela Celeste, Celeste, and the last name May, Angela Celeste May. So just like look me up and you'll find me on all of those socials. My company, A.M. May and Associates Incorporated, that I have with my sister Michelle May, who's a licensed counselor. We do counseling, consulting, and coaching. For our social media, just look for A.M. May Associates. So that's on Facebook, that's on Instagram. You can also go to our website, amaassociates.com, and find out more about us, what we offer, what we do, and how to get ways to get in contact with us. What else? Musically, a lot of those things kind of interact and overlap because I do all of those things. So the YouTube channel is predominantly more music related, but all the same, you know, in addition to that, Reverb Nation, so REVERB as in boy, nation.com /Angela Celeste May to look at some of the stuff I've done. And it has my 2 albums on there. You can also order one of my albums on iTunes as well. Let's see what else I have. My book, Freedom. What is the experience of living without negative self-imposed limitations? That's the full name of this. And I called it Freedom because it was research that I did. Many people asked me for copies of it. It was my master's thesis, and my thesis chair told me at the first blush that, you know, you got to publish this. And then I eventually did over the years when my mom echoed the same thing because people kept asking for a copy. So I appreciate it. But I interviewed people of different backgrounds, and we were talking, they were sharing their stories about how they went from feeling stuck in some parts of their lives to being free, emotionally, in relationships, in business, whatever it may be. And then out of those different experiences from people of different walks of life came 7 main principles that seem to be fairly universal in terms of what we might learn from and can apply to our own lives for growth. So you can find that at xlibris.com. You can also find it at amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com. Just like type it in, and it's on a lot of other available, a lot of other places, hard copy, soft copy, and ebook. Just like look that up. So sometimes my name is always Angela Celeste May, but sometimes it's listed as my name without doctor in front. Sometimes it isn't. What else? Continue to teach music here in the Metro Detroit area at Mary Grove Conservancy. So you can always call Mary Grove Conservancy in Detroit if you are interested in voice and or piano lessons from me. I'm a faculty at Wayne County Community College District, so I'm a college professor. I teach everything in the curriculum. I have done that for a number of years. And musically speaking, I will, what am I doing? I've got some stuff coming up. I've got some stuff coming up. Probably close to the later part of the fall and definitely into the Christmas time. And so I'll have some news on that, but I play violin and viola with the Violin Divas. So we'll be at Noel Night here in Detroit. That's coming up in December again. So that'll be fun. I'm trying to, I'm always trying to think there's always stuff going on. I have one of the consulting contracts I have now, that I just recently was asked to, invited to participate in. It's called Universal Prevention Strategies. Prevention Strategies. Colleague of mine, she started this nonprofit, and it's specifically for helping to work with and train parents of little kids from ages 1 to 3. And we're working on training them with the toolkit that the founder of this, Tammy McCrory, that she put together for helping your child hit their milestones. Understanding that every child develops differently and all of that, which absolutely we respect, but really encouraging and teaching parents how to get away from, plopping their child for too long in front of the TV or giving them screens, but actually interacting with them and teaching them how doing so helps their brain development, their fine and gross motor skills, their communication skills, their language, all of those kinds of things. So I'm enjoying working on that project right now as the part of the consulting arm of A.M. and Associates Incorporated. So that's what I have going on. That's most of what I have going on right now.
Awesome, Dr. Angie. We love having you on the show.
Thank
you
you.
again
I
for
love being
being
on.
here.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for tuning in. You can find me everywhere on social media. I'm Kimberly Batchelor Davis. Bachelor is spelled BATCHELOR, Davis, no hyphen. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads. I am on there, Snapchat, TikTok, Wisdom, I feel like I'm missing an X or Twitter, however you say it. Anywhere on social media, you can find me. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Bachelor Davis. You can hear this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. And to learn more about me as an author, you can always visit KimbyDavis.com. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you'll join us on our next episode. And as always, remember, be magnificent.